Hi, welcome to Matt's Garage. Today we're going to be transforming the front of this Jeep from this to this. And it starts with this fabricated front bumper from DV8. I've seen their name on like inner fender liners, and there's a few videos about some of their other bumper models, but this is the Spec Series front bumper for the JL. I chose this for a variety of reasons, which I'll get into, but I've already partially assembled this. And I did that by first putting the foam tape on the inside of the bull bar where the bull bar connects to the bumper body, and then loosely putting the bull bar in place without tightening the bolts. Then you take the fair lead piece, which attaches to the bull bar and the bumper body. You loosely get that into place. Then you tighten the bull bar bolts. Most of those were easy. The one sort of behind the toe point is the hardest one to get to, just because of the orientation of the nut and the location of it, but I was able to figure it out with a combination of tools. Then you tighten the bull bar, and then you go to the back side of the bumper. Now at this point, I'm skipping a step, but I'll get back to it. I installed the light brackets. These will fit a 20-inch bar behind the front grille of the DV8 bumper. The sort of slotted part points to the back. It's pretty obvious once you do it. I didn't order a light bar, but I may run one at some point, so I'm installing this, and then I'll just adjust it when I actually get a light bar. Then they have these support brackets. The bow of the support bracket points back to the back of the Jeep. These are very important because when you're winching, you know, the winch plate is going to want to taco out or pull out and up from the Jeep, and this sort of ties it to the body of the bumper. So I tighten those down to 18 millimeter and 19 millimeter. Then over on the side, these are the 4 bolts that bolt to the front frame horn of, you're supposed to install these clips in these 3 holes, and you got to kind of do it before you put the light bar bracket in. And then the bottom hole doesn't get one because you can just access it from the outside. I'm only going to install one into this slot here because I don't think I can fish a nut back there. For the rest of them, I'm going to reuse the factory hardware and just paint it black if I have to. And I'm doing that because when you're winching, the bumper's pulling out, right? But all that's holding it in is the thread on these nut certs, or whatever you call them, nut clips. And not that there's anything wrong with them, but a factory bolt is just stronger. So I'm going to see if I can fish them in there. If I can, that'll just give me a little more peace of mind. If I can't, that's okay. I mean, this is how it's designed. Now, let's get into the reasons why I'm doing this in the first place. There's many reasons to change out the front bumper of a Jeep. The main reason for us is being able to install a winch. We want to be able to rescue ourselves if we get stuck out there in the wilderness, and others actually. And that's the only time I've ever used a winch, was to rescue somebody else. But can't do that with the plastic Rubicon front bumper. They do make a stamped steel Rubicon front bumper, but those are getting hard to find, and they're like $1,000 each. So, and then on top of that, you have to still buy a separate winch plate. Another reason to get it is approach angle. Now, this JL actually has a fairly decent approach angle. And so, but getting a bumper that's shorter will allow you to put your wheel on your obstacle much sooner. That's less of an issue for us. But it's still a consideration if you're into hardcore crawling. Finally is looks. I mean, it just looks cooler. Now, the FS15 bumper is offered with an optional skid plate to cover your sway bar disconnect that comes on the Rubicons. I didn't opt for that, mostly because I want to eventually replace this with an anti-rock sway bar and lose the disconnect altogether. And if I just smash the motor, they make a manual disconnect that actually is a little more reliable than, or it's a little less, not reliable. Well, it probably is more reliable, but it's more user-friendly because you can just set it, and then when it gets to level, just click into place. With these, you kind of got to wait until you're level before it'll disengage. Some disadvantages to changing out your front bumper too. One is aerodynamics. You know, the further out this valence goes, the more it breaks up the wind going over the tires. This is lighter, and it's stock, and this has the fog lights. This particular bumper, and actually most of the shorty bumpers, don't allow you to reuse your factory fog lights. However, that has a slot in it for mounting pods as well as the light bar I mentioned earlier. So you can put ditch lights or ambers on top, and then they make kits that will rewire your factory wire to the aftermarket pods. Okay, now I'm going to uninstall the factory bumper. I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Basically, you pop out the plastic buttons that hold this fascia back here in, then you unclip the harnesses for the fog lights, then there's a series of bolts that hold the bumper on. Good to do with a friend. Don't take the last bolt off without having someone around to catch it, because it still has some weight to it, you know, with these recovery points. And then it'll come off, then we can put the new bumper on. I wanted to give a shot of what the bumper looks like in terms of height and stick out so that you can compare it to the new one. I'm going to fast forward into the future right now, and this is what it looks like compared to the original. Also, there's these fangs down here. They hang down well below the bumper, and a lot of bumpers require you to cut those off. The DV8 bumper does not, but I'm still going to do it because it's ugly. Now with the front bumper off, you can get a better look at the fangs I was talking about. And then this is the sway bar disconnect. It's held on with this isolator. It's like a exhaust hanger. And if you take this bolt off, you can swing this out of the way and get a different bolt for this hole and have it rotated up. What I don't know is, does it work with the DV8 front bumper? Engineering at DV8 wasn't sure either, so we're gonna answer that question today. And then these are the horns that the bumper bolts to. So I'm just gonna hold it up there and maybe throw one bolt in just to take a look at how everything's coming together, and then pull it off and cut these and do all that. But just want to mock it up first. One thing I wanted to do was to weigh both bumpers, old and new. 32.5 pounds. What? Is that really possible? Is this resting on something? Oh, it's in kg. But that shouldn't. All right, so let's go back to pounds here. So I have to reweigh the stock one again. All right, so this is 70 pounds. That makes way more sense. It doesn't feel like 32 pounds. So this is 71 pounds. All right, 32.5 pounds. And how much was the other stuff? It was, all right, it was around 7 and change. So that puts it at around 40 pounds. So 40 pounds for the stock setup, 70 pounds for the aftermarket setup. Okay, so that's, it is definitely higher clearance. I can't even really compare the approach angle because there's nothing in front of the tire, so it's max. Basically the fender is my approach angle. That's good. Now I'm just gonna get underneath, do some measuring, figure stuff out, and then come back and report. All right, here we are at the fat again, and I basically took this bolt off, unscrewed it. Okay, and then you can rotate this. That's too high, that hits the condenser. So you can rotate it to this bolt, basically. And now the disconnect is, not the fat, I keep calling it the fat, the sway bar disconnect is up and out of the way. You got this 100mm M10, which will go into this hole, well, this hole really. It'll go into this hole. And then I got some 7/16 by .014 round brass tube. This will sleeve it, fit in there nicely so it's not loose in the bushing. Total overkill, you don't need to do this, but I'm doing it anyway. I need a smaller M12 washer. Let's see if I got one. And the purpose, since the brass is soft, I don't want the brass being right up against the body of this. Sway bar disconnect is flipped. Okay, I'm back from the hardware store yet again. So the reason I'm doing this upgrade on the hardware is, you know, you have this M10 that sits on the bumper, and so when you're pulling on the winch, it's pulling this out. So it's really the M10 threads in here that are keeping your bumper on. So I am upgrading to grade 8 M12. which it's going to be much harder to strip those threads for obvious reasons. It's larger. I had to get different nuts because the factory ones are M12, a finer thread pitch, which has more clamping force, but this is still a huge upgrade. And then I realized that with this DV8 bumper, I can actually reuse the factory supports here, which now that's also giving you'd have to shear this bolt off too to get the bumper to pull completely away. So it's even stronger. So that's the setup I'm gonna do. All right, let's go. Oh no, we're supposed to cut the frame horns off. I have not even made the first payment on this truck yet. All right, hopefully this is the last time. The bumper is on. It is very, very sturdy. The total install time took me about 4 or 5 hours, but that's because I messed around and did the whole modification with the hardware thing. I think their target install time is 3 to 4 hours, which is totally doable using their hardware. Overall, I am very happy with this bumper. It falls into this category where you've got sort of American-made bumpers that are like 1/4 inch thick. They're heavier, and they're 2 or 3 times the price of this bumper. And then you have sort of like the super cheap stamped steel bumpers that I wouldn't trust to pull me out of a bad situation. So this is sturdy enough where I can trust it with the safety of me and my family, but it's like in that middle ground price-wise, and I think the styling is great. Like, it's better styling than a lot of the bumpers out there. So looking forward to getting to use this. Now, there's something missing right here. All right, so this is my worn winch. Just putting it up here for demonstration purposes only, and also just to see how it fits, and it fits pretty much perfectly. No, it's perfect. Plus there's room to route the wires behind, which is a problem with some bumpers. And we'll see when I actually get the feet put on there, but that looks pretty good. Well, that wraps it up for the DV8 Spec Front bumper install for the Jeep JL. I think it fits the JK too. Go to the website, check it out. I'll put a link in the description to this bumper if you like it. And I think the kids just told me there's a big box out front, so that means the rear bumper is also here, and you will see me install that next time on Matt's Garage.